So my first spiritual awakening happened when I was about 23 years old. I am now 43 years old, so that's 20 years ago. And in that awakening, I just thought that something was severely wrong with me. I went through college thinking that everybody was normal but me. Everybody had some kind of faith or religion or something that they turned to, and I grew up in a household that didn't really believe in religion. Not that they didn't really believe in religion. Religion was almost forced upon us because my grandparents lived through the Holocaust, so I felt like my parents were like breakaway Jews. They practiced because they had to, but they did it just for the high holy holidays. We didn't go to temple on a regular basis, so I didn't have any kind of faith. I knew that there was something greater than, but I didn't really know what that was. I believed in things that other people thought I was crazy for, so that in turn made me feel like I was crazy. I believed that we had past lives. I believed that there were something bigger than us leading us and all of these things. And I remember in college, I used to get high and I would sit around with people and I would say things like, what if the Bible was written by like 5 dudes on acid, right? And like I would just say these like off-putting things that people got really offended by because I was just trying to figure it out. I feel like religion is man-made. No matter what religion you believe in, it's like somebody is telling you what to do, what to practice. And I feel like as sovereign beings that we're not supposed to be that way. And so one day I went for laser hair removal, and the girl that was doing the laser hair removal was wearing a red string on her wrist. And as a kid, I remember wearing a red string. So I asked her, why are you wearing that? And she said, it's to protect me from the evil eye. And I was like, oh, I remember that. I would love one of those. Where can I get that from? And so she told me that she got it from Kabbalah.com. So I remember going home. At the time, I lived in a house with 2 other people. I had a female roommate and a male roommate. And I was in my roommate's room, and I was on her computer, and I Googled Kabbalah.com. We're going back 20 years. It was a 1-page website, and it said, do you feel like you're different than everybody else? Do you feel like you have thoughts that other people don't have? Do you feel like you've lived this life before? And I was like, the light bulb went on, and I was like, Jess, there's other crazies out there like me. There's other people who think this way like me. And so I begged her to go to the Kabbalah Center with me. It was a big fat no. And I called the hair removal girl and I was like, hey, I'm wondering, do you want to go to an event with me at this Kabbalah Center? It was so intriguing to me that there was other people out there that believed in the things that I believed in. And Kabbalah was one of the best things that ever happened to me. At 23 years old, I was in a really bad place mentally because my father had got diagnosed with cancer when I was 17 years old. My mother had just gotten diagnosed with cancer at some point that year. So I lived every day in fight or flight, thinking that I was going to lose a parent. And I had a really hard time with it. I had a really hard time with why me? Why them? Why did we get chosen for this life? Why is this happening to us? I didn't realize back then that life happens for us, right? Like now looking back in hindsight, I'm so grateful. I'm grateful for the suffering that they had to go through. I'm grateful for the suffering that I had to go through because it ultimately led me on the path that I'm on now. I would have never become a licensed acupuncturist. I would have never devoted my life to holistic and healthy living. And that's something that when I had my first son at the age of 27, it was a promise that I had made to myself and to him that I was going to try to live out this life as healthy as I possibly could so that my son wouldn't have to watch me suffer the way that I had to watch my parents suffer. From 17 to 27, all I knew was the inside of a hospital room, a doctor's office, doomsday scenarios. When my father was diagnosed with leukemia, he was given 2 years to live. as a 17-year-old in college. I was at the college dorm when the phone call came in, and there were some horrible things that were said to me on that phone call that led me to believe that somehow I was a part of that diagnosis. And it took a lot of spiritual healing to heal that in my lifetime. And, you know, growing up in a typical Russian household, there was nothing like therapy or support. So I turned to drugs and to alcohol and to sex and to, you know, seeking all of this stuff outside of me in order to try to heal me. So Kabbalah came into my life at the perfect time. It set me on my spiritual journey. The basis of Kabbalah is being the best person that you could possibly be. And it's living your life in a way that you're allowing for the light to come in. You're allowing yourself to receive. So what we don't know is that this reality that we're living, everything that we see around us that we can touch, it's only 1% of reality, the way that Kabbalah explains it. 99% of reality is like what happens when we go to sleep at night and we leave our bodies and we go to the outer world. We are here in this physical plane to learn duality, to learn how to receive, because if we think of it as like heaven and hell, that when you leave here and you're a good person, you get to go to heaven and you get to live in eternal happiness, or you go to hell and you live eternally suffering, right? So if you live in eternal happiness in heaven, and let's say you're there for 3, 4, 500, 600 years, and you're just happy all the time, as human beings, we know that we eventually get bored with things, right? Like we can't do things for a long period of time. Things just get boring to us. So we need that duality to help us realize how lucky we are, to help us realize how fortunate we are, to help us realize that the life that we're living is really good, right? Because when everything is going good, we're almost looking for something to go bad. And I'm actually living through a point in my life right now where I realize that I don't know how to live this life without suffering. Because for the first 40-something years of my life, it was all about fixing the suffering, fixing the ancestral lines, fixing the generational things, like going back into my childhood and fixing the things that happened then, right? And a lot of people, they're not that aware and they're not that conscious yet. So they don't even realize that the things that they're living through right now in this moment are happening because of stuff that happened in our first 7 years of life. Those first 7 years of life as babies is so crucial to our entire being, because every time you got scared, every time someone said no, anytime somebody put you down, we store that in our subconscious. And as we become adults and things happen to us in our adult life, we turn on the switch of that I'm not good enough, or I wasn't smart enough, or I'm not pretty enough, or I wasn't chosen because, and then we allow for those stories to take over and we don't even realize and understand that that's happening. So Kabbalah taught me all about this light, how we are a vessel of light and we have to open ourselves to receiving. So if you were to take a lamp, right, that emanates this beautiful light, and you were to put a blanket on top of it, and then another blanket on top of it, and then another blanket on top of it, eventually you would have complete darkness. That doesn't mean that the light is not still there shining. The light is still there and it's still shining. It's just that we've put these layers on top of it so we dim the light. And that's what happens to us as human beings. As we live through our life, our light gets dimmed because people say no. People are different from us, so then we feel like something is wrong with us. So that's how I grew up in my teens and my 20s. I just thought that something was wrong with me. But now in my 40s, I'm surrounded by people who are awake, people who are aware, people who are psychic, people who do past life regressions, people who think that the things that I talk about are normal. So my weirdness is now a normal thing, where in the past, my weirdness made me think that something was wrong with me. I didn't think that something was wrong with the people around me. I thought that something was wrong with me because I was so different. And what I realized in the last couple of years is that I've lived this life trying to fit myself into the box that society has created for us, right? Society creates this methodology for us that we are supposed to grow up as babies, go to school, go through the public school system. We're all supposed to learn at the same pace. We're all supposed to learn from one teacher. We're all supposed to test the same way. But that's not reality. Like, people are so different. Everybody has such different skill sets. There's a great quote by Albert Einstein, and I'll probably butcher it, but it's something like, if you take a fish out of water and you ask it to climb a tree, then you're going to have a dumb fish, right? Because fish aren't supposed to climb trees like ever in their life. So you would never ask a fish to climb a tree, right? But you ask a child to go to school and learn algebra, geometry, chemistry, and this child is never supposed to do anything that has anything to do with math or equations or experiments. And then all of a sudden this child thinks that they're stupid or they're dumb or that they're not worthy or that something is wrong with them. But nothing is wrong with them. They've just been put into this crowd and expected to do something that they're not able to do. So having this spiritual awareness happen to me so early was such a gift. And what I've realized over time is that there have been many awakenings that I have gone through in my life. So at 23 was the first awakening into spirituality. That was like my first aha moment into the whole world. And then it was a food awakening. I had an awakening in acupuncture school, which was at probably 30, 31 years old, where I started to realize that the way that we learn to eat, again, by that conformed schooling that we go through, and if you remember, I don't know how they teach it now, but I remember when I was younger, we had this pyramid chart, right? Where you were supposed to drink so many glasses of milk and eat so many things of wheat and have like all these things that now when I look at that chart, I'm like, it's complete poison. Like, as human beings, we shouldn't even be consuming dairy from cows. Because if you think about the makeup of a cow, you have this huge animal, right? Like, we are not built as these huge animals. And the thing with this animal is that maybe if they treated the animal with kindness and fed it good food and we were loving to the animals, maybe that cow's milk wouldn't be so bad for us. But in the society that we're living in now, we inject the cows with hormones. We feed the cows complete garbage. We treat them inhumanely and we like put them together. And if you think about the way that a cow is slaughtered for us to eat, we are all energy, and energy is never destroyed. So the cow, if the cow is suffering in its life and then it's slaughtered for us to eat, we are then consuming the cow's suffering, right? So I don't necessarily think that we all need to be vegan and not eat meat at all, but I think that there's some value and importance to the way that our animals are treated, because if an animal has a good life and you go to a slaughterhouse where they actually take care of the animals, they pray over the animals, they bless them before they take their life to feed on them. Because if we go back to caveman days, that's the way that the caveman survived, right? The caveman hunted for food. If you go out into the wild and you look at the way nature operates, animals hunt other animals in order to survive. So there's value in that. But when we take things like milk, cheese, dairy products that come from the cow and we start ingesting them, what we don't realize is the cows have been treated with antibiotics, they've been treated with hormones that now mix together with our hormones, with our makeup, and our bodies just can't handle that. And so we then have all of these problems. And I remember growing up, we had all those commercials that were like, milk, it does a body good, right? And milk has all this calcium in it, and milk is whatever. But really, if you go and you do your research, you realize that milk is actually bad for you. And milk actually hurts your bone density. And milk is actually not helping your calcium levels. It's actually helping to deteriorate your calcium levels. So the food awakening was a huge one for me because I was overweight my whole entire life. Until the age of 25, I was completely overweight, At 25, I had like a really good burst in my life of happiness where I was working in a gym and I was working out all the time, and I went on a diet and I actually started to lose the weight and feel good in my body. And then shortly thereafter, I got pregnant and gained 100 pounds, and that was the end of that. And then I spent from 26 to my early 30s trying to get rid of that 100 pounds, which is a total disaster and a story for another time. But you know, the whole awakening around food, like I realize now that as a kid growing up, I had a lot of issues around food because I was eating the wrong thing. I didn't understand that gluten was a problem, or that dairy was a problem, or corn was a problem, or soy was a problem. And we were just told to eat the things and to not deprive ourselves and to just keep going, right? Or if you went to school and you had any of the school lunches, you realize like the stuff that they're feeding the kids is total garbage. Like the milk program, why are we serving our kids milk every single day at lunch? And then in the last couple of years, I really had an awakening around the education system, right? And this education system that we have in America is all about, you go to school from kindergarten to 12th grade, and then you're supposed to go to college or university where you have to pay $20,000, $50,000, $100,000, $300,000 to get an education, to come out 4 years later to go get a job where, number one, you're lucky if you can even get a job in the field that you are supposed to be getting a job in, right? Then if you do get a job in that field, you're not making any money close enough to pay these bills. So you've taken out these loans from the government, and now you have to repay the government for the rest of your life. Most people are indebted to the government for their entire lifetimes. And what does that do to our psyche and our limited belief system? We're always owing. We're always in debt. We're always not good enough, or not having enough, or not doing enough. And so it creates all of these stories and all of these barriers that goes back to dimming that light, right? We're putting layer upon layer upon layer over the light. And so now as a parent, I really have to look at the way that I'm parenting my kids, because there's a part of me that's trained in the old paradigm of, no, this is the way that it's supposed to be. And so my younger two kids, they're homeschooled through a pod where they're able to live in their magic, where nobody is coming down on them if they're not doing their homework and they're not performing on tests. But then I have an older child that I still share custody with, and he has chosen to stay in the public school system, and he's struggling in the public school system because his skill set and his intelligence does not include geometry and chemistry. And so he's struggling to complete these tasks, and no matter what we do, no matter how hard we try, no matter what kind of help we put into place, he's having a hard time with this. So he internally is creating these stories for himself that he's not smart enough, he's not good enough, he's not all these things. But in all actuality, it's like, who's even going to use geometry and chemistry in their lives? Like, the majority of people will never use that in their lives. The majority of people will never use that in our lives. So why do we spend our time teaching this to the children? The children need to be proficient in addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. No question. They need to know that stuff 100%. But then they need to know stuff like, how do we take care of a house? How do you take care of a vehicle? What is insurance? What about life insurance? How do we invest money? Like, why are we not spending our time teaching our children those kinds of things, the kinds of things that will actually help them succeed in life? So as a mature adult woman, and I consider myself to be very smart and very intelligent, I have no idea how to take care of a house. I know that things need to be done, but usually you don't know that things need to be done until it's too late, right? It's like you don't know that you should get the boiler checked and fix the boiler until the boiler has exploded and your whole basement has flooded. You don't know that you need to change the air filters in the house until you're having some kind of upper respiratory stuff, and like one day you put two and two together. This is the stuff that we're supposed to be teaching our children, but we're not. And so you have to ask the question, why is this not being taught? Where these are the important parts of life. So that was a really big awakening that happened to me over the last couple of years in what we've been doing. And, pharmaceuticals, that's like on a whole nother level. That awakening has been happening to me for a while. And watching my parents both suffer with cancer, both going through the medical system, and that led me to go to acupuncture school. And in acupuncture school, we learn things like anything injected into the body lowers the immune response, right? So when you think about that, like anything injected into the body, so a lot of the things that we have in our life is like MS, diabetes. These are all kinds of autoimmune disorders where you have to go and you have to get things injected into your body to help you with these things. Now, if you talk to somebody who's suffering with these illnesses, they're going to tell you that they feel better after they get these things, right? But what is happening internally after these things are being injected in their body? Vaccinations. We take a healthy baby that comes out of a mother's womb, and within hours of this small being who's perfect as they are comes into this life, we start injecting them with all kinds of stuff. We inject them with vitamin K. Vitamin K is used to coagulate the blood. The blood in a baby coagulates on its own within 8 days of the baby being born. That is why Jewish people wait 8 days in order to have a bris, to circumcise the baby, because that's when the blood automatically coagulates. Now, you have 1 in 5,000, 15,000, I don't know what the statistic is, but there is that one baby that comes out and they have an issue with their blood coagulating. But why are we injecting every single baby with the vitamin K shot? Here's another thing off of the vitamin K shot. Why do so many kids have peanut allergies? Because the vitamin K shot uses peanut oil. So within hours of giving birth, you're being injected with peanut oil into your system. So of course you're going to have some kind of allergic reaction to it because it's not supposed to be in our bodies. The next thing, we inject the babies with hepatitis B right when they come out of the body. Hepatitis B is a sexually transmitted disease. The only reason why a baby would need to get a vaccine like that is if the mother herself had a sexually transmitted disease and was vaginally delivering the child. But we know when a mother has a sexually transmitted disease, a mother is tested for all of those things when she goes through birth. So there's absolutely no reason for a baby to get that hepatitis vaccine at birth. The other thing we do for the babies is we do the eye goop, right? Every single baby gets the eye goop. The eye goop is for the same thing. The eye goop is for sexually transmitted diseases. So every single child that's coming out of the womb does not need to have these things, but you know what happens when the hospital gives those things? The hospital gets to bill for those things. And maybe those things cost $5, $10, $15, $20, but the hospital is billing hundreds and thousands of dollars for those things so that they get paid. It's all a scam. It really is all a scam. And the deeper you go into it, which we'll cover on a different show, but the deeper you go into it, you really start to realize, and it's like this huge awakening, but this is one of the hardest awakenings for people because nobody wants to admit the fact that they've done something wrong, A. B, that they've actually done something wrong that can harm themselves or their children. So in my work, in the spiritual work, the ego work is being able to look at yourself in the mirror and being able to realize, oh my God, I did that wrong, or oh my God, I may have said the wrong thing, or oh my God, I hurt somebody because of something that I did or the words that I used. And the spiritual awakening happens in the knowing that you're able to face yourself and that you're able to forgive yourself and you're able to love yourself no matter what you've done, right? Because a lot of us, we live in this shame and this guilt and we're not able to face ourselves. So that light, that lamp, it gets dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. But what happens is every time you face your ego and you say, gosh, I'm so sorry that I did that, and I really want to ask for forgiveness because I understand my role in that fight, or I gave my child this and it caused that, and I'm not going to do that again, and I'm going to use this experience to help somebody else to know and understand. that is the ego mastery work. That is the work that starts to take those layers off of the light, and it allows for us to receive the light from above and to be these happy, beautiful human beings, because we start to realize that we're human and we're here for this human experience. And in the human experience, we're going to make a lot of mistakes. And the point is not living a perfect existence. The point of living is to go through these mistakes and realize, like, okay, I made a mistake, I'm going to do better, right? So when I became a spiritual being, the one goal that I had was to become the best version of me and to live this life so that I wouldn't have to come back and repeat this life again. Because my understanding and my knowing and my truth is that we live multiple lives and we come back to make corrections. So anytime we encounter somebody in our life, it's because we either owe them, they owe us, or somehow we're supposed to help each other on this journey. And so my goal in this life is to live this life so that I don't have to come back for corrections. And I did a Akashic record reading the other day, and I asked the question, how many corrections do I still have to accomplish? And I was told 1,647 things that I still have to correct in this life. And I'm like, okay, bring them on. Let's do it so that I don't have to keep coming back and correcting and correcting and correcting, because that's why we suffer in this life. Because we suffer because we have to make the correction. And the only way to make the correction is to face the ego and say, this is what I did. This is what's happening. This is the situation. So the aha to awakening is that it's hard. Awakening is not an easy process, but the reward is so grand. And the hardest part in the awakening is that you become weird, or you become strange, or you become unrelatable, because every time you awaken, you bring yourself closer to the light, and you bring yourself closer to that 99%. And you bring yourself closer to eternal happiness, which means that you get to experience that in this life. There's a 1% for a reason. And it's not because they were chosen to be the richest human beings in the world. It's because they've actually accomplished the things that they've needed to accomplish to get themselves closer to that eternal happiness. So if that is what you are seeking, welcome. There's a reason why you've landed upon this program. There's a reason why I've entered into your life, and I'm so excited to be on this journey with you and help you with the awakening process. Thank you for joining me today.